folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the wild landscape of Scotland. And for today's adventure we've come to the Kingdom of Fife. Today also joining us on this adventure is some family and friends out here, and we're at the Tay Road Bridge kiosk, and I just had a delicious bacon and egg roll and a coffee, and I just thought I would throw the camera on and do this intro here for this little Fife adventure. I think we're about to head down the Anstruther direction, so it'll be cool to see what action we get into. I just thought I would take a walk over here though and show you. This is the Tay Road Bridge here, leading over to Dundee from this Fife area of Scotland. And it's super busy just now because all the traffic seems to be going down one side of the bridge. So it's just one lane each way. And then there's a lot of trucks, breakdown vehicles here, which are ready to recover anybody that breaks down on the single lane. But yeah, I just thought I would show you that, folks. It's the maddest of scenes at the Tay Bridge. Check it out, folks. They've actually got a frame thing like underneath the bridge. There's a sign here, no unauthorised persons. So I'm just going down to this gate here to have a look. Yeah, what a scene. It's mad to see the construction of a bridge like that. But it's like they've got a thing that goes along the girders underneath, and that must be for maintaining the bridge, maybe painting it and doing any other maintenance work. Anyway, let's head on with this adventure, folks. Let's head into the Kingdom of Fife and see what abandoned wonders lie within. Check this out, folks. We've now made it to the beautiful shores of Anstruther, and you can see from the recent storms that there's proper sand and stuff been getting blasted up into this car park. And we've just basically parked in the public car park here next to the little lifeboat station here at the side of Anstruther. We're right in the east nuke of Fife here, folks. And just look at this classic old fishing town that we're in here. Check this out, folks. There's a proper boat here, the Reaper it's called, and just look at all these boats here in this harbour. This one's got the proper big wooden sail masts. It looks like it's actually got a steam engine as well. And at the far side of the road here we've got the Scottish Fisheries Museum as well. This is a classic Scottish fishing area here. And yeah, it's just mad to see these old harbours. The boats are well protected here within the walls. Just check it out, wow. I do apologise for any droplets of rain on the lens for this adventure, folks. It's proper like heavy rain right now. But we're out on these adventures, all conditions. Look at this. The massive metal loop which at one time the boats were tied to. And this looks like old railway lines here that they've used for their barrier. So you hate to imagine at one time those were actual rails that steam trains were hurtling up and down, and then they were reused here to stop people driving into the water. Wow, folks, what a place though. Just check us out once again in a Scottish paradise. But once again for this adventure the rain's coming on super heavy. Look at this, folks. We're now in the Anstruther Fisheries Museum right here. Look at these old anchors and stuff. I've actually got a map here with the museum on it. So we're just kind of navigating around this land and just looking at all the old historical wonders on the way. And look at this here. It's like an old stone, look. Must have been some religious stone. It says pray on it or whatever. There is actually an audio guide to go with this museum, but we never took it. We're just going to kind of go around and see what history we see, folks. And here's the first thing. So this is a classic boat, folks, used for fishing on the lochs in the Dark Ages apparently. The original boat was discovered in Ayrshire in 1823 and it's dated to around 500 AD, so that gives you an idea of the history right here. The paddle here is based on one found at Tents Muir in Fife in 1977. Just check it out, that's mad. And then these little conical things is what you would float about on, doing a bit of fishing or whatever back in the early days. Look at that, folks. I think that's a whale's ribcage right down there on the ground. That's mad. and then some other massive chunks of bone at the far side there. Here's another boat. Some creel nets for catching the lobster and the crabs. That's a guy old fashioned wooden looking thing compared to some of the modern ones that I've seen. Wow, imagine being out in the deep sea on a boat like that. Be proper scary. Look at this, folks. These are actually from the Great War for carrying 18-pounder shells, artillery shells, and then later they were changed for catching eels at a later time. And there's a picture of them in the Battle of the Somme there, with these very things on the side of their horse. So that's an interesting connection between the Fisheries Museum and the war here. And then look at all these other elaborate traps. Look at that, folks, there's a seagull up on the beam there, taxidermied. And then some of these fishing traps and that have no change to this day. It's still the same sense that the creature goes in and then can't get back out. Check this out, folks, this is the sort of thing that I love to see. This is the proper maps here of the North Sea, look. Oh, it's got Norway and stuff, and then all these apparatuses, sextants and things for navigating the land, and the compass, the massive old compass, and then this telescope here for spotting land ahoy they'll be shouting. And look, here's Scotland, the shadow from the lights at a poor angle, but it's amazing to see the North Sea here literally mapped out. It's so interesting to see. Check this out, folks, this old lady's here got a vape. I didn't know vapes were invented this time, eh, Car?
No, that's right.
It's your vaping.
It probably is.
No, folks, I think it's actually an old apparatus she must have used for opening up these shells. Oh, there's actually a fine heat coming off this radiator. On a cold day like this, folks, in Scotland, it's fine to feel the heat of a radiator there. Look at that. Used to dry line caught fish to preserve it. Wow, that's over 30 years old, that fish, folks, hanging from there, they believe. That's the kind of history that we just love to see. Look, a tin tube. Wow, look, this is insane. So that was used for shooting small fishing lines over the Gurdon boat White Wing, which is now owned by the museum. The sailors would have one hand in each end of this, and I think they must throw over the line, the fishing line. And look at this thing. It's like some lamp. Check this out, folks. This shows how when the two boats are dredging with the net, this shows you how the net actually looks underneath the water as they're catching the fish. And then look at this interesting one here, trawling. Yeah, that's drift netting at the top. Then this one's trawling. And look, you can see the drag that net along the bottom like a big pocket. So it's cool to see that demonstrated with these models. Here's some interesting china pieces and crockery out of the old boat. Check that out, folks, some old anchors there, different shapes and different sizes, probably depending on the boat. Yeah, this is mad, there's loads of wee bits just set up. Yeah, imagine how life was back at the time when stuff like this was in its prime. Look at these like wooden rope reels. Just think each bit of that's made out of rope, made out of wood I mean. That's just crazy. Look at all these different knots as well, which were used for tying the ropes and the nets. It's mad just to think there's that many different knots. It's incredible. Look now, folks, this is what the controller's room would have looked like for the old Anstruther Union Harbour. It says here, look, registered office. And look at the old typewriter, similar to one that I found in the old bunker recently. Some of these displays are quite dark, so I'll get the torch on so you can actually see. And look at the old stove. Yeah, this is mad, folks. I love coming into places like this and just seeing wee corners of Scottish history and heritage. Today it's the fishing area here in Anstruther. Just check this out. This is where the women would have been preparing the fish and sorting them out after the day's catch. Look, a lot of them had their fingers wrapped up with plasters. Probably worn through to the bone for the hard graft, the labour. Yeah, you can see the proper pictures of them back at that time. See the picture of the harbour, it's amazing. I wish I could get closer to that. It's amazing to see how many ship sails is in the harbour. You just would not believe it. Millions. Such an industrial landscape back at that time. Check that out, folks. A heap of different tools used in the fishing industry. The coopers. They made barrels required each year to cure and keep the herring. And that's what they were sorting out in these big trays here. You can see the boy here putting them into the barrel. That was big on the east coast of Scotland here. Big fishing industry back in the day. Before modern quotas and stuff came into being. It was just a thriving empire for a long time. Scandinavian spruce. That's what the barrels were made of. Check out that blowtorch in there, folks. That's a proper bit of kit. It's a self-heating barrel branding machine. So that would have been for branding the barrels right there. The blowtorch just heats the back of this cast piece. And it reads Scotland Laspen DS40. Surrounded by a crown motif. So that is interesting to see. And each barrel would have been branded with these different kind of tools. This gives you an idea of some of the branding on the top of the barrels that was burnt in. Depending on obviously the fishermen of the area. Look at this, folks, there's an old memorial here for the war. In memory of our fallen comrades. The British Legion of Anstruther here. 1914 to 1918, 1939 to 1945. And it is interesting to see the amount of people that sadly perished in the wars. Just from this one small area of Scotland, it gives you an idea the magnitude of what was done back at the wartime. Sometimes some of the places I explore kind of has that local connection to the wartime history as well, so it's cool to see this. There's just so many names on here. All different regiments. So it's saying here a lot of the fishing boat crews and trawlers were actually requisitioned by the Navy in the wars. And it says this one here was, the Drifter was lost on the 5th of March 1918. And then this steam drifter requisitioned during the Second World War to be used as a hospital ship. So that shows how the fishing boats or communities were changed during the war. And obviously the government would come and take those boats for their use. And then at the end of the war they were most likely given back if they weren't destroyed. Wow, here's a room of remembrance, folks. Look at this, folks, this is the North Sea. Compiled from the most recent surveys, but look at the year, 1883. Which is so interesting. This is how they would have mapped the North Sea in 1883. And they would have followed this kind of guide. So interesting just to see this. See the lands that lie within. Here's the Shetlands, so Scotland's down here. Orkney Islands and stuff. Caithness and Sutherland. Oh, this is Scotland around here. I'm seeing it now, folks. Wow. So the way I would look at this map, I'm realising now, folks, it's actually that way around we would normally have our map. Whereas this one's turned to that shape, and you can kind of see the edge of Scotland here with the North Sea, Orkney Islands and Shetland Islands. I love seeing that, the old maps. It's amazing to see how things have changed since back at those old times. Oh yeah, look at this, the days of steam here. Let's take a peek around this corner. Yeah, it's just some like models of ships and stuff. I quite like seeing all the original like memorabilia. Look at this here. It's a Wessex self-contained, ready for use, line throwing rocket, folks. That's amazing. So that's for putting the line out. Oh look, the original signs there. Wow. So it was used to throw a line to vessels that were in distress. The lines had a range of 228.5 metres in calm weather. And that's basically what the kit looked like when you got it. It had 4 rockets within it. It's a Coast Guard heaving rod. It was attached to the end of the throwing line. So that would be if they didn't have a rocket for getting the rope over to the distressed vessel in. They would throw that with the rope on it. That's so cool. Look at this, folks. There's a map here with these little bulbs. And then there's buttons here. I'm just trying to figure out. There's the Montrose button there, look. But I'm not sure what it actually does. I can see the light on anyway. Oh, this is ports of registry. Every British sea fishing boat had to be registered at a port. So that'll show you all the different ends with the buttons, where they were. That's what it was, folks. Look at this, folks. There's little miniature engines in here. I've put the light on because it's quite dark in this display. Model steam engines. It's amazing all the wee bits and pieces that they've made there for that engine, like. Check that out, folks. Model steam boiler and engines right there, and imagine that in the lower decks of the ship right there. Look at that, folks, the old lanterns right there. It's so interesting to see the different styles of lantern. Look at this, folks, it's a harpoon log right here. This is insane. Look at that. So the harpoon log was used to calculate the speed of the boat according to the number of rotations over time that occurred. So that's an interesting old device there of measure for the speed of the boat. It says they were used less after World War II when an electromagnetic log was actually introduced. And look at this, folks, this is the old compass off the ship, look at that. Wow, that's so interesting.
It was actually lost overboard in a gale and it was trawled up by another boat.
Oh wow, imagine catching that in your trawling net.
Imagine how rage they'd be losing it though.
I know, eh, like... Shows how extreme the storms must have been. And look at the old boxes that the fish would have gone in when they got ashore. Packed with ice. Or salt would it have been back at that time. Look at that down there, folks. You get a sneak peek into the other bit of the museum. It appears to be the old house. I think they've got a place set up like a house. Look, there's an old drift. It is ice they're putting on the fish, and that little clip there I noticed, so. 1929, some of that was going on, folks. Check this out, folks. This is now the story of motorised shipping. And just look at all these contraptions that must have been like the dashboard on the ship. And then the steering wheel here. And then look at these instruments of measure and navigation here. This looks like some sort of radar or sonar apparatus. Wow. The Kelvin Hughes machine it's called, folks. Then look at this old radio right here, radio equipment. Almost similar to some of the World War II equipment that we see on adventures. Then the old Montrose and Banff map right there. It's been circled many times by maybe a fisherman of the era. And there's the captain's bonnet. So interesting, look at the old clock. And then look at the old barometer there, which was quite accurate. It's on rain, and as you saw from the start of this video, folks, it's raining, so. Check that out, folks, right there. That's one of those stoves, like what we've seen in some of those old abandoned houses. most likely early 1900s, a stove like that. And this is obviously made to look like inside the boat what they would have had. The boy would have been chilling out there. It's cool to see how they've made this though, folks, just like an old ship, and you can see the wee portals. It's actually like a proper section of a ship that they've got in here. That's obviously the captain's control room, but look at the wee rungs for climbing up and maybe working at the top of the vessel, maybe operating the sails and stuff like that. It's so interesting. Then they've got all these models of boats here which are so well made. If you had a hobby like that, it would be some job dusting in about all those little nooks and crannies there on the machine. This is all signs and stuff off the ships. Names of the vessels here. It's so interesting to see the different carving and different font of the letters. The Scotland flag here on each vessel. Look at that, folk, on that boat there, sorry, on that book I should say, Fishwives and Fish Girls Costumes, a souvenir of the Fisheries Exhibition 1883, and that lady must be dressed with the latest of styles and fashion of the time. Wow. The Scottish fishwives were invited to attend an international fisheries exhibition in London, alongside fisherwomen from other countries. This souvenir guide illustrates and compares many of the traditional costumes together with the peculiarities of the various fishing communities. So that's pretty cool, pretty interesting as well. Here's more of these things for like opening shells and stuff like that. The little hand tools that were at once used. There's a fishing song right there, folks. Collar Heron it's called. Here is some of the old clothes they would have worn back in the day, the old fishwives. Often when you see an old photograph like this, you can't tell the colour of things and the materials properly. So it's interesting to see that. Look at this, folks. This has to be one of the coolest bits of the museum that I've seen so far. Look at these engines. Wow, we'll love to see this stuff like this. This is like old boat engines and little engines that's been in ships all the way down this side. But then look at this. This is a massive ship engine. Look at the size of it. Look at the big flywheel right here. And then the timing chain there and the gears. All these external valve springs and stuff. I just love to see stuff like that. Imagine that sitting chugging away in the bottom of the engine. 4 massive cylinders right there. And then there's an even bigger engine further down here. Yeah, this is a 4-cylinder petrol paraffin engine built in Glasgow. Wow, used on converted sailing boats, sometimes as one of a pair. So sometimes there would actually be 2 of these. So you imagine the power. 4 gallons of paraffin per hour with a 24-gallon tank, so it was just drinking the fuel up for sure. And look, these are smaller engines as well off different boats. This must have been for starting it, some kind of handle mechanism. And look at the old propellers. So special to see the different styles and types. Now look at this massive engine. It's a Glenifer, also built in Glasgow. This is a light or heavy diesel, it says. And look, it's like the sump. I'm going to hit record down here to see if the sump is there. Oh, look, it's got a high sump, but also, see the sump is ballasted. And the reason for that will be, so when the boat's rocking about on wild seas, the oil will always be kept to the oil pickup pipe in the sump there. That's a big engine though, for sure. Classic diesel unit. So these engines were built from 1952 to 1962, folks. And look, this one's still got the gearbox on the end of it, which must have been driving out to the main boat prop. And there would have been a handle on the top for engaging it, maybe even reversing it. I was just going to have a quick look. Yeah, this engine here, 1913 to 1934, so that shows how the technology changed from the massive petrol paraffin unit to then being that huge diesel system. And I believe this was a lot less gutsy on the fuel, 3.56 gallons per hour on light diesel. And then we've got these here, look at this. I love all the brass parts on these old engines. That's when they really built things to last back in the day. These seem to be Kelvin engines. That must have been a popular make of engine for the boats back in the day. Looks like they were built in Glasgow from what I'm seeing here. Made by Burgess Company. Yeah, look at that one, it's got a cracked head on it, most likely because there had been water or whatever left within it, and then it had frozen. And that's how an engine goes, it pops like that and breaks. Around forever. And that's what I'm seeing here. I'm also seeing evidence it's been seized. Look, it's been turned with the Stelsons. But you can imagine an engine that age, for like 1947 to 1959, that's seen a lot of days and nights and stormy conditions. And normally with the sea salt, it just ruins and corrodes things so quick. This is a strange unit here, it's like a pump. And then like a winch mechanism. Look at this, folks, we're in our element right here. Look at this massive 6-cylinder Kelvin diesel engine. This one here's still got the gearbox and the propeller on it. Look at that, the size of that there. It's got a Kelvin oil operated reverse reduction gear on there. You adjust the oil pressure. So that's interesting to see that. That must be some crazy way that's operating back in the day. Look, it's got a mini mech pump on it. Commonly used on a lot of engines back at that time. And it just shows that even in the marine engines they were using such pumps. Wow. See also, look, the pipes are coiled there. And I believe that's so it's the same length of pipe for each cylinder. Even the nearby ones are the same length as the far away ones. And then look at these decompression levers up on the top there. And that's what you may have seen on a recent video on the channel when me and AKR were starting the old Lister diesel engine. AKR was working those decompression levers to get it fired up. Yeah, look, this one here is a massive Gardner engine. And it's cool to see this with like the individual cylinders. Is this an engine? It is an engine. It's just such a strange layout and design. It's unreal. Wow. Yeah, look at the systems on the back of there, folks. That is insane. What a massive setup. And the fuel pump of that is down the back. Look, it says a head and a stern on there. Wow. This is insane to see this, folks. All these engines, the different sizes. It was worth coming to this museum just for these engines alone. It's so cool to see. Massive Kelvin diesel engine here once again. The construction of them so like heavy made. Look at the big flywheel. And let's see what else is here. We've got a twin Petter diesel engine here apparently, folks. That must be what this silver thing is here. Oh yeah, look at that. All these classic British made engines, all that industry is now gone, forgotten and lost. Not only were we making these powerhouses and engines, we were making the gearboxes at one time and the ships which these engines lay within. All industry that's just lost now. Skills that's lost. Yeah, look at this Lister diesel engine here, folks. Single cylinder. Another common British type of engine that was used for so many applications back in the day. Looks like this one here has been a generator for creating electricity. Now look at this, folks, this is a more modern engine right here. It looks like it's a Caterpillar V8 diesel engine right here, and it's in great condition. It's a proper big monstrous engine. Yeah, it's interesting to see, folks. I love seeing how all the different engines are constructed for obviously whatever they were used for back in the day. Wow, look at the exhaust coming out the back of there. Oh, it's a turbo engine. I can't even believe what I'm seeing right here, folks. Look at this. Is this not a turbo? Look at the size of the turbo. Wow, this is actually the turbo here, folks. That thing will have some whistle on it. This is a powerful unit here. And look, it's got the Marine twin disc transmission on it. What a bit of kit. And the big starter motor on the back. Yeah, this is one of the coolest engines here, but also one of the newest. There'll be a plenty of black right out of there when it's running. And look, here's different types of fish, and then shelled fish that you actually get around these areas. So cool, the variation of history that you get in a museum like this. It's just so many nuggets of the heritage of the fishing. And then in here you can see the old fishmongers, which is still the type of shop you could find in the streets of Scotland here. Most towns used to have a fishmonger, but most commonly nowadays the coastal towns have still got fishmongers. Look at this, folks, this is actually a Norwegian rotary foghorn. Made in England, it says. It was originally invented by the Norwegian Ole Christian Hansen with the help of local craftsmen. Following tests by the Norwegian Navy, it proved to be successful, and a small factory was established to produce Hans-Sloren larger versions with 2 horns. However, a British agent copied the design and started to sell them under the name of a Norwegian foghorn. The one on display came from a Peterhead fishing boat. So it's interesting to see inside there. It's actually got belluses. So as you turn the handle there, it pumps the belluses and then pumps the air out of the foghorn. So there you go, folks. It's super interesting to see the way they used to make things. It's like mechanical devices rather than the modern electronic devices that would have like an electric motor with an air pump. They had the proper use like belluses and crazy old contraptions like that. Check this out, folks. There's now a full-sized ship here in this particular room. This is absolutely massive. Considering this thing here is made of wood. It's just insane to see. Check out this construction, folks. We are this pieces of wood, look, they're refurbing it, fixing it up. It's good to see that. Just imagine the original people that put this together and think where those pieces of original wood may have come from. And then think of the miles over the sea that they've probably travelled. It's just insane history we're witnessing again. So an interesting detail, folks, to bend and curve the wood, they used to put it in like a steam box and then press it to get it into that shape. That's how they got all these contours and curves in the wood for the optimal ship design. Look at this, this is made like a little ship cabin. Wow. It just shows how each person would have maybe had a little bunk there or whatever. Look at that, folks, I've got the torch on once again. There's a wee stove there. That's like the kind of thing they would have used to heat their ship back in the day. And then for light they would have had the wee paraffin lantern. And it is just so interesting to see the way they constructed all this stuff. Look, this window's directly above the engine that we looked at a minute ago in the engine room. Yeah, this is so cool, folks. Look at all these contraptions here. Look at that. Wow. Then this here was obviously used for winding in the ropes. Modern ships still have an item like this on them. Often you see them working that when they come in and out of port. and out the harbour. Look at this, folks, there's this massive area here with ships and boats, and looks like there's another engine in here. Yeah, there's an old bandsaw and an old boiler and stuff. This is insane, folks. This museum here is absolutely massive. Look, we've got a boy actually in here right now getting a bit of wood out of there to make a boat. This guy's proper constructing a boat down here, folks. Shout out to this guy. If you're watching this video, I can see he's using a Makita cordless sander, but I thought they should be using traditional sanding methods. Look at this, folks. Here's tools that they would have originally used to build the boats. That's how the workshop may have looked at the time of the boat building. But actually, a lot of boats were actually built outside. As you can see from this picture here, this is a boat getting constructed here outside. And that's it. Pitt and Weem in 1895 they were doing that. And then today you can see this is supported by the Heritage Lottery Fund. This boat here must be getting refurbed and redone. Look at this, folks. Now we're in the days of whaling. Look at these massive whale harpoons that were fired out to catch the whales. And then look at this. This is a harpoon and an air spear. So this 20th century harpoon has an explosive head and would have been fired from a gun. The air spear was used to pump air into the carcass of fin whales, which do not float naturally when dead. So that's how this has got holes in it. They would fire that into it and then pump air in from the vessel, and then that would float the whale up to the top of the water where they could then harvest it. So it's crazy to see that, and this is massive. Obviously the explosive head must have gone in and fired and opened that. That would have hung open and then locked itself into the carcass. But the different ends that's been designed is just insane. A lot of them's got these little folding ends that are like a one-way lock. Once it goes in, it just gets stuck. Look at that savage big knife. A whaling ship amongst the ice in the Arctic in the 1900s, so that shows it was a 1900s thing. The first whales to be exploited were those that were stranded or washed up on the beaches. Medieval Scottish ship pursued whales off the coast, but it was not until the 1750s that the Scots routinely visited the Arctic whaling grounds. So that gives you an idea of the history of the whaling. And look at the different shapes. See this twisted harpoon, folks, look. It was recovered from a whale. Its fantastic twisted shape gives some impression of the animal's strength and its struggle to escape. So just imagine that the whale was able to spin round and round and whirl that thing up. That is just mad. Look, folks, that's a miniature version of what like the harpoon gun would have looked, that they would have fired this out of originally. Look at this, folks. I think it's called the Lively Hope, the ring net boat. Look at the little cabin there that the captain would have stood in when he was guiding the vessel through the wild seas. And there's a fair bit of storage, I believe, below deck. So interesting to see these boats and the construction of them. Most of the time when I'm on adventures, folks, it's abandoned boats and abandoned fishing heritage. So it's cool to see this stuff that's been saved and rescued. And it's amazing the size of all this stuff. Check this out, folks. We're now below the level of the boat here. Look at these incredible winches. Different mechanisms. Look at this. This is actually like a planer. Wooden planer right here. I'm not sure if that was for the manufacture of the boats. Some of these tools. I'm actually interested to look at this boat here called the Jubilee, because it looks a lot like some of the boats that I've seen in the Montrose area abandoned by the coast. So let's see what it's saying. A rab fishing boat. That doesn't look like the one in the picture though. This is a different boat I think they're speaking about. Yeah, this is a different boat. This sign here is actually for this other boat over here. Look at this massive Gardner diesel engine as well, folks. 6-cylinder diesel unit here. I believe it's a non-turbo unit we're looking at. Yeah, wow. Wow, it's quite compact. Look at the big fuel pumps. It's almost like two 3-cylinder pumps that's on the back of there. And look, there's a windscreen out of the boat, the front of the driver's cabin. Look at this. The Shetland gutting machine, folks. Must have been for gutting fish. You would put them in here, look, there's wee channels. And then whatever this contraption's doing inside, it must be literally gutting the fish, which must have been a crazy thing to invent back in the day. It took the hard handwork labour out of jobs like that. Yeah, I believe this boat could be, it is of very similar construction to, obviously a lot of boats are very similar construction, but I've seen a lot abandoned round the Scottish coast like this. It was maybe a particular boat builder that made a lot of boats at that time, the same style. Look at these massive wooden wheels here. It's actually an interesting picture of an old Fordson E27N pulling a boat up, and that's what these wheels were used for. They would connect these to the side of the boat, raising it off the ground slightly, and then they would pull it with the old Fordson tractor out of the water. So that is interesting to see. I had no idea they would ever do that. Check it out, folks, this is a massive steam boiler which must have been in a ship back in the day. One of these old steam ships that were used commonly for fishing at a certain time. Even the early 1900s up into the 40s, early 50s, they were still using boats that had engines like this, systems like this on them. This is a massive vintage bandsaw here, made in Glasgow, and probably used for the construction of ships and vessels back in the early days. Then look at this here, we've got a little blacksmith shop. And a blacksmith would also have been a key person in the manufacturing of ships. You can see the boy sitting down there, he's got the gas bottles, the oxyacetylene, and he's just away to run a weld, or he's away to heat up or bend a piece of metal. You see the old furnace with the old bellows there for blowing the air in and warming it up. And then there's absolutely a massive electrical generator there, which is so cool to see. It was most likely powered from some of these engines like what we've seen on this adventure. And it's proper vintage gas bottles as well. Back in the early days, no flashback arresters or anything on them. Yeah, what a cool insight into history this has been. There's some pictures of the old boys shoeing the horses, like Orkney. Orford of Orkney, 1890. And here's a boy at Argyllshire, 1960. Look, it's the same furnace bellows right there. And look, Argyllshire as well, 1960. The boy working away there in his workshop. Workshops like that were used from ancient times right up until modern times. A lot of the tools haven't changed much either. Look, here's one of the fronts off the boat. A lot of the old wooden boats had grand carvings of wood on the front like that. Right folks, AKR has now joined us here and he's just updated us with the history. I said this was actually a generator powered by one of these ship engines that we just saw, but it turns out it's actually the boys' welder here for the blacksmiths. This would have been an AC motor turning a DC generator, and that's what they would have been using most likely for the power of the welder back at that time. Look at this folks now, we've got some ancient radar equipment here. Yeah folks, this shows how the radar equipment has come along since the early days of shipping all the way until nowadays. This looks like about a 1940s unit or whatever. This is all like navigational aids for the boats. Oh look, this tells you the depth. I'm sure you still get a display like that on the modern digital screen. An echo sounder you call it folks. That's for seeing the bottom of the water, but also if there's a school of fish, it would show up there on a thing like that. And this is all different versions of that as the technology progressed. Oh yeah, this is a fair machine this scene. It's called a fish finder, folks, and you can just imagine seeing the technology. That would be the latest thing, and if you didn't have that on your boat, you'd be thinking the next boy with this technology would be getting all the fish. Before that, it was the skill of the boat captain that was to find the fish, whereas once devices like this were invented, the machine did the work for you. And look at this, this is a massive fishing vessel, and how it would actually look on the top of the boat. It's a crazy big model, and all the different winches. Look at that, folks, at the rear of the vessel you can see how the big winches would winch the net over the back of the boat. And you see that on the boats in the harbour with the big rusty back where the seawater gets dragged up, corroding the metal over the years. Look at this, folks, there's big masts from the ships here. It's incredible to see. Once again, Tom's joining us on this adventure, folks. Shout out Tom's brother, he watches this videos. Tom's once again with us on this adventure, and he says hello. And now we're about to head up to the old fisherman's cottage at the top of these stairs. Look at the big anchor. Look at this, folks, this is the old fisherman's house here, and if you look at the fire on the faraway wall, that's the very type of fire we've seen in some of the abandoned houses recently. It's amazing to see one here that's not rusted out. And then it's just cool to see all the little nuggets of the old Scottish house and how the people lived back in the day. And basically their whole life would revolve around one room back at this time. This is similar to what the house would have been at the top of the Cairn Mount that we saw recently on the video. You can see they had the old box bed in the corner of the room there. So cool. Sometimes houses back at that time only had like 2 rooms, and they spent most of their time in that one end room. It was almost like a kitchen and a sitting room. Look at this, folks, this is the sort of thing that the fisherman may have stored to do with the fishing. This is what the guy would have looked like after the day's fishing. You can see him happy. And look, he's got his bonnet down there as well, a leather waterproof bonnet. Look at that interesting bench he's sitting on, it's got a hole in it. And it must have been for putting his tools, look, when he was crafting things, and maybe nails and things would go in there so he could easily pick them out. See, they just don't make things like that anymore. Look, there's another bench the same behind them.
It's got the doors in it as well.
Oh, aye. So it's a proper craftsman bench. Yeah, it's so cool to see all these different baskets and fishing nets, fishing floats. It's just such a variation of fishing heritage. Oh look, that's for making the ropes, eh? You hook it on and then twist it with the other end. Look at this here, folks. This old fireplace has got one of these bars. It's different names are given to this bar in different areas of Scotland, but pretty much you would hang your pot of stovies on there and cook it above the fire. And look, this is obviously, I don't know if this has been an original chimney or no. If it is blocked with wood, but these side stones have definitely been replaced at a certain time. Different layers of history, folks, just changes over the time. It's hard just to see what's original. And then look at this, look at the wear on this doorstep from the years and years of people walking in it. That's the kind of history that I love to see in these old buildings that date from ancient times in Scotland. And then let's take a closer look at this anchor here. Absolutely massive cast iron construction here. Just think of the size of that. Think about how at one time that would have held the boat in position in the wild sea through the storms and the waves. Right folks, here we are now at the side once again of Anstruther Harbour, and you can actually book little boat trips and stuff out to the sea for some of these boats here. So if anybody's in the area, it's quite a cool little touristy area. And we just actually got our dinner there. There's a little cafe in the Scottish Fisheries Museum and it was absolutely delicious. And yeah, we all really enjoyed it, so shout out all the staff there. Delicious meal you prepared. If anybody's in this area, I would strongly advise that you go in there for a look. I'm now walking around the back of this lifeboat station because I was just about to have a look down here. This must be the launch ramp down here. Look at this, folks, this little internal harbour section. I do apologise for any wind in the audio here. There is a slight breeze blowing through. And look, it's a real golden sand here at Anstruther. And then there's a little light at the corner of the harbour wall, an old signal light which was used to signal to the ships to show them and guide them to the harbour entrance in the stormy weather. And then I can see in the far distance, way out on the coastal like lands there, I can see there's a proper big tower. I'm not sure if it was an old lookout tower of some sort back in the day, but it's just incredible to see how many boats is here now, and compare that to the old picture of the harbour that I saw in the museum, where there was just nothing but like boat masts from one side of the harbour to the other, whereas now there's only just a few. And that shows how the fishing and shipping in this area has changed so much over the years. Yeah, the boats just fairly bob about on the water as they sit. Right folks, that's been a fun adventure at Anstruther here. We're ending it here though. Shout out once again Tom's brother. You watch the videos. Here's Tom. He's a celebrity now on YouTube.
Away you go, bro.
And we're going to end this one here, folks. Thanks to everybody that's tuned in. It's been another fun adventure here, exploring some of the heritage of Scotland. It's often fun on these little videos to see the wee museums and the nuggets of history that's been saved from time and nature itself here in the wild lands of Scotland. Anyway folks, thanks very much for watching. I'm ending this one here. Goodbye from me, goodbye from AKR and the rest of the family here. And we'll catch you very soon on the next adventure, wherever we end up going.
Ra